Well, that's it. Kiln is on, and you're right. I missed the the grand startup process, but I don't know. Maybe I'll get it for you guys again. I'll try to capture footage the next time I turn it on. We just turned it on today just to turn it on, just to make sure everything would come on and run. We got it all wired up and plumbed up yesterday, and so this morning I came out. I had my bypass valve open on my water supply. I went ahead and went over here to my manhole access right there in the yard. Sent the water supply through our line to actually bring water to the unit with that bypass open, and let it just flush out for about a minute, just full rate, just blasting water out of the unit, blowing out any mud or little bits of plastic from cutting PVC, anything like that. Just boom, get it out. And then I actually choked this valve back a couple times. I went and choked that valve back a couple of times to kind of surge the water through the lines and help knock anything loose. And then eventually left that one wide open, came over here and slowly choked this one back. Pressured up the whole system, checked for leaks, no leaks. Went inside, threw the breaker, threw the breaker on. Came out here, rotate this switch 90 degrees from off to on. Computer fires up, gives you this cool looking screen. I had to sign a disclaimer that I knew, there was no warranty or something like that, I don't know. And then just hit the start button, and it does the rest. So right now, the vacuum pump, we just turned it on, the vacuum pump is running. When we started, it was like 29.3 inches of mercury, which I've got to get myself familiar with the inches of mercury. I always think in terms of PSI. I think it pulls down to like 7 or 8 inches of mercury, something like that. I really can't remember. I'll go back and look. But right now it's still pulling down, and so the whole time it's pulling down, the vacuum pump's going to run. All this water dumping out on the ground right here, that is just water that's flowing through the vacuum pump to keep it cool. So once the pump shuts off, that water will shut off. It seems very, very wasteful to have that much water running out. And that's why we were wanting to, potentially we're going to see about capturing all this and letting it run to the pond. The only thing we've got to figure out is on the case drain, or the vessel drain, which is not running right now, when it drains out all that water that is a very high sap content, it might be a very high tannin content. We just don't know for sure how that might affect the water quality in our pond. If our pond is big enough and deep enough, it probably won't be an issue. But I'm still trying to figure that out and trying to get some information to convince me that it's going to be okay and it won't, cause any sort of toxicity build up in the water over time, kill our fish or make the water where we can't swim and enjoy the pond. So for right now, it's just going to run out into the woods. I'm going to hook a 2-inch drain line and run it out basically to the property line, just so it's not right here behind the shop. But anyway, so for right now, that's running. The pump is drawing down the pressure. You see now we're down to 16 inches. And it's gonna run just like that until it gets down to that cutoff point, and then the pump's gonna shut off and everything's gonna go quiet. And then it's just gonna sit here and it's gonna let moisture start migrating out of the wood. So for now, for today, like I said, we're just running it just as kind of a test to get it turned on. I still need to load it. It's nowhere near loaded full. We just wanted to turn it on. As a matter of fact, I can actually tell it right now. That's what the muffler's for. I bet that sucker's loud without that muffler. So now we've shut it off. It's not doing anything, so it should hold right here where it's at. If I go to status, the heater's off, the pump's off, vacuum release is still off, drain valve's off. Vacuum 2% on, I don't really know. That hasn't changed. Since I turned it on, the vacuum has said 2% on it. It hasn't shown like a gain, but we can go to our graphs here So here was our startup. Basically, it said relative humidity 0, but it had to get a baseline, and then it kicked up, and it said relative humidity was around 50%. So this is our scale for relative humidity over here: 0, 50, 100. The blue is our pressure in terms of vacuum. So yeah, you see we started up here at 30 inches of mercury basically, and then red is our temperature. So when we turned it on and the vacuum pump first kicked on, first it takes a reading up here. It says, okay, we're at atmosphere basically. Atmosphere was it 29.4 or something in inches of mercury. And then as the vacuum pump started running, you see the temperature actually start dropping, which should make sense when you're in a vacuum. The temperature actually drops at first. And actually, I guess it was getting a baseline, because see, it was saying it's at like 130, which there's no way it was 130 in there. So it dropped down to about 70, which is our temperature this morning, 70, 75, something like that. But you can see just a nice straight line down. It started pulling down that vacuum in the vessel. And then here our red line starts warming up our temperature because the heater started kicking on. And so the relative humidity was dropping. That should be, I think, because it was drawing a vacuum. So as you're drawing a vacuum and you're physically drawing the air out of the vessel, you're also taking out moisture. So that relative humidity should drop at first, but then I think as the unit sits here and the wood starts to migrate the moisture starts to migrate out of the wood and the temperature holds, that relative humidity should start to go back up, I think. I was looking, so it has this 24-hour plot. So basically, the screen's already like smudged up here. But basically this spike right here was just my current activity. All that right there. All this back here was them testing it at the facility as far as turning it on and testing. So you can see at the facility, they pulled it down. Look, oh no, it pulled down to like 3 to 4, right? If we go over here, 3 to 6. So 4, 4.5. Basically, they pulled down to 4.5 inches, and then you can see where they released the vacuum and it shot back up to 9, or the pump shut off, I guess, maybe, and it shot back up to 9, but then it held. Yeah, so see, it holds around 7 to 8, basically, the whole time that it's in test. And you see their temperature was building because they got the temperature up here. The relative humidity actually dropped, which it should over time. At first, it's going to increase as it pulls moisture out of the wood, but then it should drop as the wood starts to dry. I don't know when they were testing it if they actually had wood in it or if they just tested it empty just to make sure everything functioned. Anyway, pretty fun little gadget. I guess I'm gonna let it sit here for a second. Well, whatever. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the vacuum release. So there, it's opening a valve and it's bleeding off. And I don't know if it's bleeding. I don't know what it actually opens to release the vacuum. There's another muffler up there, so it's probably up there where it sounds like it's coming from. There's another built-in muffler up there, so it's got a solenoid valve. So I think that's what's actually releasing the vacuum there. And so we should start to see, yep, sure enough. It's kind of weird to think in terms of negatives here, but releasing the vacuum and you're seeing our atmospheric pressure start to come back up. So it should be, I guess, if you're releasing the vacuum, it should be letting moisture in from the outside, which I would think then our humidity maybe will climb back up here. And it starts to stabilize with what our outside humidity is, which I think our humidity right now is, like I said, it's up here, it's at least 50%. So that's that. I'm gonna let it build back, and basically whenever it stops doing anything, it looks like it's stable, then we'll see about opening the door. Like I said, I didn't want to run a full cycle on it right now because the lumber I have in there, I just have 2 straps on it. The kiln is by no means full, and it's not tied down near as tight as I want it to be. So I don't want to start actually drying this stuff and potentially mess up the lumber that's in there because it's actually sold wood already. Okay, so yeah, there's your startup on the kiln. Super simple, I guess. I was expecting there to be like some sort of initial startup procedures, but I guess there's really not because they already turned it on at the facility and tested it. So by the time you get it, it is truly plug and play. You hook up your power, hook up your water, load the wood, shut the door, and push go, which is awesome. So yeah, raise your glass. Here's to a successful career drying wood, I guess.